Picture this, one screen, a CEO sleeping under a desk, fueled by 70-hour work weeks and the mantra #rise and grind. This is hustle culture. On another screen, a young employee quietly clocks out at 5 p.m. sharp. Weekend emails go unanswered, and mental health is prioritized. This is quiet quitting. Millennials once embraced the grind. Gen Z is now championing boundaries. What happened? And why are these two philosophies defining a generational burnout crisis? Welcome to Gen Shift, where we're decoding the future of work. Today, it's hustle culture versus quiet quitting, generational burnout. Subscribe if your job has a job and your hobby is trying to quit your job. We get it. The grind is real, but so is the desire for peace. The rise of hustle culture. The grind never stops. Hustle culture, the glorification of relentless work, long hours, and sacrificing personal life for career advancement, dominated the 2010s. It wasn't a simple choice, but a conditioned response to a perfect storm of economic precarity, cultural indoctrination, and technological intrusion that defined the millennial entry into adulthood. Millennials came of age professionally in the long shadow of the 2008 financial crisis. They graduated into the most hostile job market in generations, with the unemployment rate for young people hitting a staggering 15.5% in 2013. In this intensely competitive environment, hustling, working longer, taking on extra responsibilities wasn't just for advancement, but for basic job security. This was compounded by an unprecedented burden of student loan debt, which influenced job decisions for over 60% of private sector employees, forcing many to prioritize a higher salary over job satisfaction. The side hustle was often not a passion project, but a second job born of pure economic necessity. As millennials struggled, a powerful cultural narrative emerged that glorified their plight. The 2010s witnessed the apotheosis of the startup ethos, an ideology exported from Silicon Valley that canonized overwork as a prerequisite for success. Social media platforms became echo chambers for this ideology, saturated with hustle porn, a genre of content that romanticized the grind. Influencers built massive followings promoting a rise and grind mentality, framing relentless work as the path to fulfillment. In a culture that increasingly valued productivity as the ultimate measure of a person, being perpetually busy became a status symbol, and self-worth became inextricably tied to professional output. Technology provided the final piece of the puzzle. Millennials were the first generation to enter the professional world with smartphones as an indispensable tool, effectively dissolving the boundaries between work and personal life. The office was no longer a physical place, but a state of being accessible 24/7. Answering emails at midnight shifted from being a violation of personal time to a demonstration of commitment. Imagine Sarah, a 32-year-old marketing manager. She scrolls to an old photo from 2014, her laptop open at 11 p.m., an empty energy drink beside it captioned, #work hard, play hard. She remembers the pride, the validation from the likes. She was juggling a low-paying job with freelance work, desperate to dent her student loans. She recalls working 70-hour weeks to land her first promotion, believing sacrifice was the only way up. Today, she feels the phantom ache of that grind, the chronic anxiety, the neglected friendships, the burnout her doctor would later diagnose. That photo wasn't a celebration, it was a cry for help, disguised as ambition. This experience reveals a deeper truth. Glorifying the grind was a psychological defense mechanism, transforming an act of desperation into an act of virtue. It also marked the first great rupture of the modern psychological contract, the unwritten promise that extraordinary effort would be met with stability and security. Millennials held up their end of the bargain, only to find the other end was often missing. Quiet quitting, Gen Z's response to burnout. Quiet quitting, the practice of performing only the duties specified in one's job description and rejecting the expectation of unpaid extra labor, is Gen Z's calculated response to the perceived failures of the hustle model. Gen Z had a front-row seat to the consequences of hustle culture. They grew up watching their millennial parents, siblings, and first managers succumb to chronic stress and exhaustion. As one Reddit user articulated, capturing a widespread sentiment, I've learned a lot from seeing elder millennial friends burn out hard for very little return and have learned from it where and when to draw a hard line. This vicarious experience fostered a deep skepticism toward the work is your life mantra. While millennial work attitudes were forged by economic crisis, Gen Zs were forged by a public health crisis. The COVID-19 pandemic triggered a profound reevaluation of life's priorities, highlighting the non-negotiable importance of mental and physical well-being. Simultaneously, the forced experiment in remote work proved that productivity could be decoupled from a physical office, granting employees unprecedented flexibility. This was formative. For Gen Z, work-life balance is now the single most important professional motivator, ranking higher than both job stability and financial incentives. The term quiet quitting exploded into the collective consciousness via TikTok in 2022, giving a name to a sentiment that had been simmering for years. Viral videos framed it not as shirking duties, but as quitting the idea of going above and beyond. This quickly evolved into the more assertive philosophy of act your wage, which posits that an employee's effort should be directly proportional to their compensation. It's not about being lazy. It's about a fair exchange of labor for pay. It's 4:45 p.m. on a Friday, and Sarah, the millennial manager, sends an urgent message to her team. A client has a last-minute request. Alex, a 23-year-old analyst, promptly replies, "Thanks for the heads up. I've logged my hours for the week, but I'll be happy to make that my priority on Monday morning." Sarah is momentarily stunned. She flashes back to her early career, when she would have worked all weekend to prove her dedication. Alex's internal monologue is different. They respect Sarah, but they have plans. They know that sacrificing their weekend is a direct path to the same exhaustion they see etched on their manager's face. They are not being difficult, they are being sustainable. This is a silent protest against leadership that fails to foster an environment of trust and respect. It forces organizations to confront a critical question. Is the culture you've built one that is worth going above and beyond for? Economic realities, survival versus optionality. The chasm between hustle and boundaries is not about character, but about the starkly different economic terrains each generation navigated. Millennials operated from a baseline of scarcity and survival. Gen Z operates from a framework of greater perceived optionality. The economic story for millennials is one of defense. Entering the workforce after the 2008 crisis, their primary objective was simply to secure and maintain employment. This survivalist mindset was cemented by the weight of student debt, which limited their career mobility and forced them to prioritize immediate income over long-term satisfaction. Their work philosophy was shaped by a reality where they had to run twice as fast just to stay in the same place. Gen Z's economic reality is one of adaptation and diversification. While they contend with record inflation, their economic toolkit is different. They are digital natives who came of age with the maturation of the creator economy, a vibrant market now valued at over $250 billion and projected to nearly double by 2027. With over 207 million people globally identifying as creators, this ecosystem, alongside the gig economy, offers accessible alternative income streams. This access creates a powerful psychological shift. Even if a side hustle on TikTok doesn't replace a full-time salary, the possibility that it could reduces dependency on a single employer, cultivating a sense of optionality that was a luxury for most recession-era millennials. This economic leverage empowers Gen Z to be more selective. It is the foundation that allows half of Gen Z to reject a work assignment if it fails to align with their values, a level of discernment born from having other options. The data paints a clear picture. While both generations report high levels of financial insecurity today, with over half of each living paycheck to paycheck according to Deloitte's 2024 survey, their strategic responses differ. Millennials hunkered down, Gen Z diversifies. This has led to a fundamental redefinition of job security. For Gen Z, true security no longer resides in a company, but in one's skills and personal brand. Quiet quitting is a strategic allocation of resources. By refusing to overinvest their finite energy in one unreliable employer, they preserve it to build their own, more durable forms of long-term security. We've explored the push and pull of work philosophies, but where do you stand? Are you a dedicated hustler or a strategic quiet quitter? Comment below with your work philosophy and tell us about your experience with burnout or finding balance. The psychological toll, burnout, and well-being. Hustle culture and quiet quitting are inextricably linked to workplace burnout, one as a primary cause, the other as a coping mechanism. This dynamic is rooted in deep psychological processes concerning motivation, fairness, and the fundamental relationship between an individual and their work. Burnout, as defined by the World Health Organization, is not just tiredness. It's a specific occupational phenomenon characterized by profound exhaustion, increased mental distance from one's job, and a sense of ineffectiveness. Hustle culture is a direct pipeline to this state. Its core tenets, relentless pressure and dissolved boundaries, are a textbook recipe for chronic, unmanaged stress. At the heart of this crisis is the rupture of the psychological contract, the unwritten mutual expectations between employer and employee. It's the unspoken deal. Hard work and loyalty will be met with security and respect. For both generations, this contract has been systematically breached by decades of stagnant wages and routine layoffs. Quiet quitting is the quintessential behavioral manifestation of a workforce that feels its psychological contract has been violated. The fallout can be precisely explained by self-determination theory, or SDT. Developed by psychologists Edward Deci and Richard Ryan, SDT posits that for individuals to thrive, 3 innate psychological needs must be met: autonomy, the need for choice and control; competence, the need to feel effective; and relatedness, the need to feel connected and belong. When these needs are thwarted, motivation wanes. Hustle culture directly undermines autonomy. Quiet quitting is a desperate act to reclaim it. When an employee's competence goes unrecognized, their motivation evaporates. Quiet quitting is the predictable, passive consequence of a work environment that fails to meet these basic human needs. Sarah, the millennial manager, confesses to her mentor, "I used to brag about the 70-hour weeks that got me this promotion. Now I'm 35, burned out, and I spend my days watching my Gen Z analyst, Alex, log off at 5 p.m. on the dot. For months, I resented it. But now, I think it's sanity. I wonder if any of my sacrifices were worth it." This reveals a crucial distinction. Millennials largely experienced burnout as a personal failure. Gen Z, armed with a new vocabulary, frames the same feelings not as a personal failing, but as a systemic one. Where millennials internalized it, "I couldn't handle the pressure," Gen Z externalizes it, "The system is designed to create unsustainable pressure." Finding common ground, working smarter, not just harder. The path forward lies not in choosing one extreme, but in forging a new synthesis. The future of work demands a model that integrates the resilience of the millennial experience with Gen Z's insistence on well-being. A balanced workplace will leverage the distinct strengths each generation brings. Millennials contribute hard-won experience and resilience. Gen Z contributes innate digital fluency, a focus on efficiency, and an unwavering commitment to healthy boundaries. To attract and retain talent, organizations must rewrite their psychological contract. This means embracing flexible work with clear boundaries, rewarding impact over hours, and investing in management as a core competency. After all, managers account for 70% of the variance in team engagement. The data is unequivocal. Well-being drives performance. Companies with highly engaged workforces see a 23% increase in profitability. For individuals, the goal is to work smarter by learning to hustle with intention on high-impact projects during work hours while quietly quitting the low-value tasks and after-hours creep that lead to burnout. This requires treating rest not as a luxury, but as an essential component of sustainable productivity. In a sunlit conference room, a multi-generational team debriefs a project. Sarah, the millennial manager, publicly praises Alex, the Gen Z analyst, for automating a report and saving 2 days of manual work. Building on this, the team agrees to implement Focus Wednesdays, a day with no internal meetings. It is a solution born of mutual respect, one that honors the millennial drive for results and the Gen Z need for protected mental space. This is the future, a workplace that is more adaptive, human-centered, and balanced, benefiting all generations. Conclusion. Hustle culture, once celebrated, led to widespread burnout. Quiet quitting, a Gen Z response, advocates for boundaries. These aren't just labels, they're defining work philosophies shaped by distinct economic realities and evolving values. Ultimately, neither extreme is sustainable for long-term well-being. The future of work isn't about working harder or barely working. It's about working smarter, with intention and purpose, while fiercely protecting our mental health. It's about finding a balance that truly works. Leaders must foster cultures that value both impact and well-being. Employees must advocate for their boundaries while committing to meaningful work. By understanding these generational philosophies, we can bridge the divide and build a workplace that supports everyone. Which work philosophy resonates most with you? And what's one thing you do to avoid burnout? Share your thoughts below. And if this episode sparked a new perspective, hit like and subscribe. Join GenShift as we continue to decode the evolving world of work and well-being.